Now let's paint some cabinets. First thing we need to do is get prepared. We have the paint right here, and we never dip it out of the bucket because a gallon of water weighs 7 pounds and this probably weighs 10 pounds. Therefore you need to put it maybe half a pound in a smaller bucket, and there's a reason for that. Over here we're going to start on this cabinet face. We have to look at the tools that we're going to use. This is a Purdy brush, which is these are expensive. I call them blue bottles. They're blue, but these are very good for making fine lines. But I always like them because they're professional in what I do. Now I have sanded everything down here and here and here on the front of the cabinet. I'll take this off, and what we're going to do, get a plan here, is we've got a bucket full of water and a wet rag in case you have a spill. I really probably should not be doing this on concrete, but since I'm too lazy to move it and I know how to paint, I'm not going to move it. But if you're afraid that you're going to make a mess, then either cover the floor or do it on the grass. What we're going to do here is we're going to do the back side of the cabinet first. And our goal is to put 3 millimeters of paint on it. What we're not going to do is this edge down here, all the way along here, and all the way up here. This will not be touched for now. There's a reason for that. You'll run into a hell of a lot of problems if you paint these, and I'll get into that later. But I'm going to paint this. I'll give it 2 coats. There is no 1 coat paint. I don't care what anyone tells you. If you get some paint salesman or painter that tells you there's a 1 coat paint, run. Because the guy don't know what the hell he's talking about. Okay, then what? We'll let this dry. We'll flip it over, and this will be the final side that gets painted. Now we have our rags. We have our semi-gloss paint, which we will put in the bucket. You don't need to carry around 10 pounds of paint. Okay, it just makes your painting worse. Besides, there's another reason for that. Also, another thing we have to look at is this right here, temperature. Right now it is 75 degrees, slight wind, and we have to remember that all water-based paints dry from evaporation. They dry from the wind, the air. Oh, and happy 4th of July to everyone. And the humidity. You cannot paint on a rainy day because of rain. With all the water in the air, it will not dry the paint. But if it's too hot, then that's not good either. Those are things we have to think about. Now I'm going to pour the paint, and I'm going to show you how to use a paintbrush correctly, which in other cabinet painting videos they don't show you. I'm going to show you all the tricks I've learned in 2 years. Get the hell out of there. That's it. I've had it. That's it. You're going to the glue factory. Get! Bastard. So, I'm going to pour the paint, get it over here, and slowly show you how and why it's done. Now let's take a look at brush technique. Now a lot of these things I'm going to cover are very simple things that other painters in their videos don't explain. But once you understand the techniques, the simple techniques that we use, you can use them and be a much better painter. And I'll show you why. What I have here is some of the white paint. It goes down, it probably weighs, half a pound. Now if you're going to carry this around and do all your work wherever you're working, it's a lot easier than carrying 10 pounds of paint. Besides, that can right there will actually harm your painting, and I'll explain why. This brush, like any paintbrush, we only use the top, no more than the top half. This other half where the ferrule bules go into the handle, we don't get paint on them. I mean, you only want to dunk it halfway. You do not want to dunk it all the way, because you're not going to use it up here. Now remember, I showed you we had water right here. It's 70 degrees out right now. This panel here just like a house panel, is probably closer to 90 degrees. That means the paint's going to dry a little bit faster. Now, I know this may sound repetitive or tedious, but the first rule of painting is to get the paint on the surface. To do that, we have to know how to use a paintbrush if you're using a brush. Now, this is a phrase that you may not have heard of, or you may have heard of, but if you simply dunk the paintbrush into the paint and pull it out, you're only pulling so much out on the brush. Okay? In order to paint correctly, what we have to do is we have to load the brush with paint. Now, loading does not mean dunking it all the way in up to the handle. It's got nothing to do with that. Okay, the first rule is we have to get the paint onto the panel. Second rule is we have to load the brush. Now I'll show you how. You take your brush. Remember, you have your water over here. It's nice and hot. Okay, and we take the brush and we put it in the paint. See how much paint there is right there? Okay, that's putting it in there. Wow, look at that. We got that much paint, right? But you got to remember, in these bristles here, there's a lot of room. And to load a brush, this is how it's done. If you've never heard of it before, you get a shallow bottomed container, and what you do is you tap the brush like this. I'm doing this over exaggerated to show you, but what I'm doing is I'm loading up the ferrules on this paintbrush with paint. Therefore, you get more paint on the brush to put on whatever you're going to put it on. Okay, now as you can see, this is kind of hard to do one-handed. And you want to go back and forth on your swipes, and take your time. Remember, painting is an art. It's not it's not a sentence. But you can see, okay, you can see how much paint I put on from just that much. That's because the brush is loaded. Now, when we paint, you want to go in straight strokes, like this. And you always, if you're painting up and down, up and down, up and down, you always want to end on an upstroke, not a downstroke. See, a downstroke will cause this right here. You see that? You see that puddle? Okay, when you're going down, you go like that, and it causes this puddle. But when you're going up, like this, and like this, you can see that it does not cause a puddle. That gives you a better surface. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this backside first. Do not touch this at all. I'll explain that in the end. I'm going to give this back 2 coats because I only want to paint it once for the next 20 years. Then I will turn it over and do the front. You always want to do the front last because the front is the part you're going to see. So now you know how to load a brush. You know how much paint to use. You know the brushing technique. You don't need a $30 brush like this. This is just for contract painting. Also, this is what I want to explain. In the middle of summer, when it's hot out here, this paint right here is drying. Now, if you have to go to lunch, or you have to go do something else, you see this nice little water right here? Okay? There's the brush in the water. I'm thinking, oh no, look, he's got water in there, oh no. Well, I'll pull that out of the water, and I will clean the brush off the water. I'll have a nice fresh brush, and I'll continue painting. But if you have a crusty old paint all over the brush, and if you have paint between your fingers and you can't mobilize your hands, then you cannot mobilize the brush. Okay, I'm going to post this, and I hope you've learned something. Happy 4th of July 2010, baby.